on page 16a, where we're dealing with the laws of items that were initially mekabel tuma. There were items that were susceptible to becoming impure. And the thing is that something happened and that they are maybe no longer fit for their use. And do we still consider them susceptible to tuma regarding, at least regarding not being able to use for schach? So the Gemara on page 15b, it was talking about the aruchais hamita, which the Mishnah had mentioned, that you were using these boards for schach for your sukkah, and the Mishnah implied pretty clearly that they're not going to be acceptable for schach. The only reason why you might be able to get away with using them is if you have a lot of empty space and you're using kosher schach in the empty space and so on. But the aruchais hamita, these boards that are part of the frame of the bed, they are not kosher for schach. So the Gemara is dealing with that. Why are they not kosher for schach? And the Gemara compared it to baloi kalim. Baloi kalim is baloi means worn out. And kalim normally means utensils, but it could also mean garments. And here we're talking about garments. It's clothing that's worn out. And you want to use this for schach. And we explained yesterday that we must be talking about something that grows from the ground. So we said linen grows from the ground, cotton grows from the ground. So these things should be kosher for schach, except for the fact that they were made into clothing. And once it's made into clothing, it's no longer raw material. And things that are no longer raw material are generally called susceptible to tumah. Generally, that's like the a simple way of understanding tumah. Not necessarily does it apply in all cases, but generally, things that are raw materials are not susceptible to tumah. Once it becomes an item, a utensil, it's already developed and for that there's been some type of a production and activity, actions done on it, some type of work done on it, then it would be more probable that it's susceptible to tumah. It's a finished product, something that.
Rabbi,
Yes.
the fact that it says aricha samita, the long boards, does that imply that the short boards would be okay?
No, it just would be more practical.
Oh, okay.
You know what I mean? It's use the long boards, you cover more space, might be easier to use. You need less frame to hold it up, because you don't need as many boards.
I'm thinking of whether the bed frame has to be dismantled before you put it up there, or even if it's dismantled, it's no good. Therefore, if it's not dismantled, it's definitely no good.
Right. If it's not dismantled, then the Gemara wouldn't even have a discussion because it would be a vessel outright. Here we're dealing with it's dismantled, and because it's dismantled, there's room to question this. Well, it's not exactly usable now for sleeping on. It's a piece of wood, but it was at some point. This was part of a bed. This was an important part of the bed, and therefore the Mishnah seems to be basing on the fact that it was part of the bed. Somehow it stays unacceptable. It stays invalid. It retains its level of concept of being invalid. So the Gemara had said that this is similar to the clothing, where clothing that gets worn out and you no longer can use it, for clothing, it's no longer usable, it's still puzzle invalid for schach. So here, that seems to be a very similar idea to what our Mishnah is saying with the bed, that it's no longer usable, but nevertheless, it's still invalid for schach. Why? Because originally it was something that was makabel tuma, and it basically retains that rule, that law of being invalid. And the Gemara says that this maybe is a support for the law about clothing. And the Gemara says that not necessarily. Why? Because this case, you could be talking about that it has legs. So even though it's separated from the bed, so it's been broken off from the bed. So again, the original understanding of the Gemara is that it's just the piece itself. That's the original understanding of the Gemara. Then the Gemara says, no, maybe it's because it has legs. Maybe it's talking about that it has legs, and because it has legs, there's room to say that it is somewhat usable. And this would apply to even the small board, small part of the frame. It's somewhat usable. If it has legs, you could theoretically place it near the wall, opposite the wall, and have some, support beam connecting it to the wall, and then just tie some rope around it. So it seems to be could be considered like a vessel, and this would be different than the case of the baloi kalim, the case of the worn out clothing, because the case of the worn out clothing would not be a vessel. That is not a vessel. It might be prohibited for use for a sukkah, as we see Rav Ami Bar Tavyumi wants to say that it's not eligible for schach, but the fact is that it's not a vessel. Now, the concept seems to be that once something is invalid, it stays invalid. At least that's what you see from Rav Ami Bar Tavyumi. And the Gemara wants to say you don't necessarily see that here from the bed, because you could say that the bed is different. The bed is more of a vessel even now, and it's called Makabel Tuma, and it would be invalid because of a biblical problem, not because of a rabbinic problem. So again, there's a way of differentiating, of separating between these two cases, and saying that one would be more of a biblical problem, the beds, and possibly the clothing would be only a rabbinic problem. Now, it could be, see, the Rambam seems to say another reason. The Rambam says that the reason why the clothing is invalid is because we're afraid that you're going to use something that's bigger than the size of this little tiny piece of worn out clothing. Again, the Gemara, that the case, the situation that we were been dealing with is this baloi kalim. It's where it's really small. It's less than 3 finger breadths by 3 finger breadths. Any item that's like 3 finger breadths by 3 finger breadths, that's generally could be used as like a patch. I know nowadays we're not so familiar with patches, but in the olden days, and at least when I was in school, people used to come to school with patches on their clothing. I guess now we've reached a new level of wealth in the world, but the patches would be used as long as it's 3 finger breadths by 3 finger breadths.
Most of us are older than you, so we remember even
you definitely
more.
remember.
We definitely remember the good old days, as they call them.
Right. So so the story is that why is the piece of cloth that's less than 3 finger breadths, why is it not kosher for schach? It grows from the ground, and it is not a utensil. It's not a beged. It's not a cloth. It's not going to be used. Why is it invalid? So the first thing I mentioned was based on this concept of once it was excluded from schach, it stays that way, which is an interesting idea because that idea is based on the laws of kudshim, of sacrifices. In sacrifices, you have a concept of kivan the nidchu. Once it's been pushed aside, it cannot be used again. Even though now maybe it should be acceptable. There is a concept of in kudshim where something is not valid to be used as a sacrifice. We basically exclude it from the laws of sacrifices. So that could be an understanding here of sukkah, which would take us to a very interesting conclusion, and that is that sukkah is very similar to kudshim, that it has, which is an idea that we did learn a little earlier about, that we had it brought up somewhere earlier in the tractate about the sukkah being similar to chagiga, and that there's some element of holiness to the sukkah, and it's not just a mitzvah, but actually has a level of holiness to it. It's similar to a chagiga. If you remember, it was definitely a surprising law there as well, that that the sukkah, like chal shem shamayim al hasukkah, that sukkah has some type of holiness to it. Now, this is a continuation of that idea. This is another area where we find a similar thing, where just like kudshim has a law that something that's not, that's no longer, that wasn't accepted at some point, it loses its ability to be used again. Here also, we seem to find this idea that that the sukkah is similar to kudsh. Here the sukkah is similar, and once something's not usable for the sukkah, even if it now is no longer a vessel, we're still going to say, nope, you've been considered invalid. We don't accept you anymore for the sukkah. You're no longer valid for the sukkah. The Rambam seems to say a different reason. The Rambam says that we're afraid if you use a patch that's so small, it's not even a patch, it's less than 3 finger breadths by 3 finger breadths. We're afraid if you use that for schach, you might end up using something a little bigger, which would be considered a vessel, like a patch would be considered a utensil. And so that would be another reason why it would be invalid. Well, in other words, the reason for our Gemara. Now, the Gemara now says that what was the case where Reb Chanan talks about his law about the beds. So the Gemara, and that's where we turn to page 16, and on 16a we had this case of a mita mitames. It receives tuma. There's a number of psukim in the Torah where you have to be careful to say the vowels properly, because mitame or mitame there's a major difference if it means it makes something else tame or it becomes tame itself. So here we're talking about the mitames. It becomes tame when it's complete. This is according to Rabbi Eliezer, and we explained yesterday that when it's broken into pieces, the pieces are not makabel tuma, and the same thing is if it is impure, you want to make it pure, you got to attach it all together first, and then you could purify it by dipping it in a mikvah. Now, the rabbis argue with that. The rabbis say that the bed, even if it's broken into pieces, it's still able to become tame. It's mitames, even in pieces. And it's also, you could put those pieces in the mikvah. And the Gemara said, how could this be? That it's susceptible to tumah. I mean, it's not the bed is broken in pieces. The Gemara answers that, well, it's talking about that it's the boards, the part of the frame that has legs with it. And because that part of the frame, you could theoretically lean it against the wall and use it. You could tie a rope around it and basically use it to sit on. So it would be considered that it's a utensil. And that's really where we got up to yesterday. And that was the case where Reb Chanan said in the name of Rebbe that this is the Aruchas Hamita could be considered a vessel, a utensil. So that's basically the Gemara that we did. So we're going to start by the words gufa on page 16a. 16a, we're about 6 lines from the top. I should just mention that there is a little discussion of those words, the last few words that we ended off yesterday. Questionable what the actual text should read, because the end words that the words that we ended off yesterday was that what would you use this half a bed for? So the Gemara says lemismechinhu aguda, that you would lean it against the wall or use some type of beams from the wall to it. And then it says that you would ulamesav alayhu, which means to sit on it, umishta ashli, and attach ropes to sort of like weave around it. You're going to weave a rope around it to be able to sit on. Now the problem is the order of those words sounds a little out of place. Why? Because it says, what are you going to do? You're going to lean it to the wall, then you're going to sit on it, and then you're going to make a rope, put rope around it to sit on. If you're sitting on it, you're going to fall through before you put the ropes on. So it should say the opposite, to put the ropes and then sit on. So some don't have those words to sit on, and then of course it goes fine. It doesn't tell you about sitting on it. That's obvious you're going to sit on it, and you're going to sit on it afterwards. But it just has the words, you put the rope around it, it'll be usable as a chair, as a bed or whatever, then you could sit on it or lie on it and so on. And so that's the other option is it might mean that you sit on it and you weave, not that you sit on it and then put a rope around it to sit on. It means you sit on it, and in order to weave, people like to sit down when they're weaving. So you sit on it and then you do your weaving. So that's another way of reading it where it actually fits the wording. Okay, anyway, that's the previous Gemara. So we're now going to start with the words gufa. And gufa always means that let's go back to a statement that we said. Gufa, we had just mentioned this statement, and the Gemara maybe will elaborate or ask questions on this statement. So gufa, we just stated, it was just stated. Omer Rav Ami bar Tavyumi, Rav Ami bar Tavyumi says, Sikcha, if you used as chach, bebaloi kelim, you were masachech your sukkah, you covered your sukkah bibaloi kelim, with the worn out clothing. Pesula, it is invalid. Now, why is Rab Ami bar Tavyumi, why did he say this? Obviously, there was room to think that maybe it should be valid. What would the reason to think that it should be valid? Why would clothing be valid for schach, worn out clothing? So again, we're talking about that that it's less than 3 finger breaths by 3 finger breaths, and it's not usable. Something that's not usable is not susceptible to impurity, should be able to be used for schach as long as it grows from the ground, like cotton or flax. So the Gemara says, my baloi kelim. What is this case of these worn out clothing? Amar Abaye says, matlonios. They're little pieces of cloth. She'ein bahem, shalish al shalish. They don't have 3 finger breaths by 3 finger breaths. Deloi chazyon, they're not fit. Loi la'aniyem, v'loi la'ashirim. They're not fit for the poor, and they're not fit for the rich. So because they're not usable, they're not called a vessel. Nevertheless, the Rav Ami Bar Tav Yumi comes to tell us that they will not be acceptable for schach. And as we said, the reason would either be because we're making a decree that someone might end up using bigger ones, bigger patches that actually could be used, and those would be considered susceptible to tuma, or because we, once something is invalid, it stays invalid, similar to the laws of kudshim, similar to the laws of sacrifices. Okay, so that's this little piece, and then the Gemara says Tanya Kavosei the Reb Ami Bar Tav Yumi. The Gemara says we have a brisa that seems to say a similar thing, and it's not surprising when a Moira, a later rabbi of the Gemara, says something that it says in a brisa. It is surprising if he would say something that it says in a Mishnah, because something that says in the Mishnah, he should know that it's a Mishnah, that he shouldn't need to say it. But something that's in a brisa was not edited into the Mishnah format, so it's not surprising he said this law, but actually happens to be stated by an earlier rabbi in a brisa. But the brisa is not like necessarily not everyone knows every single brisa. So where do we have a brisa that seems to say a similar thing? So it says machzeles shel shifa. If you have a mat made out of shifa, and I don't know if you have the English Gemara, you might have a translation for the word shifa, but it's some type of a growth and some vegetation that grows by a swamp. So it's called shifa. Rashi brings the Old French, it's called liska, but I don't know Old French, so I can't tell you what that is. But in any event, there's something called this mat made out of shifa, and another example is a mat shelgemi, or a mat made out of some type of reeds that worn out and it got small. Shiareha, its remnants, afal pi shenifchasu meshiura, even though it became smaller than its size of being usable. In other words, each item has a certain size to it that would be considered that's the appropriate size for such an item to be used for its purpose. And once it's become smaller than that, it means it's no longer usable for that purpose. And for example, in this scenario, what are these mats used for? So this type of mat was used for let's say sitting on. So sitting on, you need to have a certain size that you could sit on. If it's too small, you'll be partially off it. And so the thing is, so if the mat got smaller than that size, so you would say, well, I guess it's no longer a utensil, no longer an item, a vessel, and it's no longer susceptible to tumah. But however, the brisa says, no, ein mesachechin bahen, even though it's no longer usable for its purpose. But nevertheless, we are not mesachech with it. You can't use it for schach because it came from a vessel. And here Rashi tells us that because it came from a vessel, and it was Makabel Tumas Mishkav, Zov, and Nida. It used to be susceptible to the Tuma of Zov and Nida, basically these type of impurities that are more strict. So because of that, you cannot use it for schach. Now,
Rabbi,
yeah.
Shifa is papyrus.
Oh, okay. Papyrus. Okay. Thank you.
Well,
Does it say what
my
Gemi?
I don't know. My translation is just calling it mat, and then it's actually saying that the papyrus and reed grass is already in the text because it's just saying, for example, papyrus and reed grass, but the word shifa is just translating as mat.
No, I think Matt would be Machzelas. And maybe they wrote it wrong. But Shifa
Uh,
and Gemi are two examples of these mats. So it should be
oh,
translated
matzelet. So
the
matzelet is
Machzelas
mat, and
mat.
and then shifa and gemi are papyrus and reed.
Right.
For example, it
Yeah.
says,
Those
for
are
example, papyrus and
examples.
reed, and
Yeah.
then matzelet is the word for mat, I guess.
Matt. Yeah. Now, the words, for example, that they wrote there are not part of the Gemara. They're their own addition. I don't know who that is. Is that the Koran or the Art Scroll? What do you have?
This is that Torah app I
Oh, the
mentioned
Torah app.
before.
Torah app. Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. All right. So anyway, so the Machzelas of Shifa and Gemi, so papyrus. Thank you, David and Victor. And the Gemi of the reeds. So basically, it's smaller than its purpose. So the thing is that you cannot use it for schach. It used to be something that was not eligible for schach and not usable for schach, and now we're going to keep it with that rule that it's going to stay invalid for schach. Okay. Now that fits very well with Rav Ami Bar Tavyumi, because Rav Ami Bar Tavyumi basically has a similar thing with his clothing that got also too small. So we've got the laws of the mats from a brisa. We got the laws of clothing from Rav Ami Bar Tavyumi. Just got to put the air conditioner on. Hold on a second. Okay, so the Gemara now continues with this brisa. The brisa really continues, and it says, what about machzeles hakonim? When you have a mat that is made out of reeds, so gedola, if it's large. Now, the large mats were used for roofing, and roofing meaning like shade, like for shade purposes, for schach. And the smaller ones were made to lie down upon or sit upon. So the big ones, so machzelas hakonim gedola, the big ones, mesachim. You can use it for schach because it's not meant to sit on. If it's not meant to sit on, it's not called a vessel. It's not called a utensil. So it's not susceptible to tumah. But katana, but the small ones that are meant to lie on, those, of course, they have to be big enough to lie on. But those are ein masakhin ba. You cannot use for schach because it's really meant, it's made for sitting on. That would make it a utensil. That would not be acceptable for schach. It would fall into the category of susceptible to tumah, to impurity. Now, Rabbi Eliezer says, Af he, even the big ones, mekabelas tumah ve'ein masakhin ba. They are susceptible to impurity, and you shouldn't use them for schach. Now, the Gemara later is going to go into these laws with the mats. This became a very controversial subject, very questionable when they started coming out with these mats now, that's why a lot of the mats have a shayrim.
You're talking about the bamboo,
bamboo mats
yeah,
that are very popular now, but they weren't popular 20 years ago. It's really happened over the last 20, 30, 25 years to have mat. It's probably 25 years is where it's they've started becoming popular. And the question is, I mean, is it so simple to just use mats for schach? What are they made for? What are the Chinese when they make them? What do they have in mind when they're making these mats? Are they making them in order to lie on? Is that something they do in China? Sit and lie on these mats? Who knows? So this
they're
is
only we're interested in making money. I don't
money.
think they care. I don't care. They don't care what we use it for. I think.
Right. Right. But it could have to do with what the guy thinks they're going to be used for, who turns on the machine in China, and if he thinks they're going to be used to lie on, maybe that could be problematic, So it is an interesting question. In other words, a lot of people just at this point they've sort of come to the conclusion that you could buy. It seems that a lot of people buy them just from Home Depot, as long as there's no metal or they have some way to do it. I don't use them from Home Depot, but I mean, seems like the CRC even at some point gave an okay to use certain ones from Home Depot. But the question really is, what about if the person who turned on the machine in China had in mind to lie on, that these are being lied on? Would that invalidate all of these mats? Because that would make
they got their Torah at Mount Sinai.
I don't know about that. What do you mean? But could that invalidate?
Sini, as in Sinai.
Oh, Sini. Yeah. So the question would be, I mean, I don't know what we're really relying on. Like, do the kosher ones, do they have a rabbi turning on the machine to make it that it's have in mind for schach instead of, or at least they tell the guy what it's for, maybe, and the guy, so the guy knows what he's making them for. Was that good enough? And then the question would be, what about the ones that are made that are not, that have no hechsher? So it could be that we're relying on this law here, that as long as it's big, it's kosher. So maybe that's what they're relying on. So you don't have to really know what it's made for, based on how big or how small it is. If it's small, then it could be a problem. But the question is how small. How small, because they do sell 6x8s schach covers, or even six. They might even sell smaller 4x6s. Right? They sell 4x6 schach covers, schach mats. So
could it be, Rabbi, that the string that they string it together with is something that's not makabel tuma, and the ones that are not under hashgacha might be makabel tuma?
Yeah, I don't know. At some point, I used to think that way, that they didn't completely twirl the string.
I'm reading from the OK website. Is it okay? Hold on.
Yeah.
By Moshe Heinemann, Kashrus Currents.
Starcade.
Sole Garan Vike. Many natural materials are not qualified to be used for schach. Leather is a natural product that does not grow from the ground, neither do cement, no natural materials. None of these may be used for schach. All types of foods are not kosher material for schach. Included in this halacha are grain husks that have some grains remaining in the husks, wood products that are cut and shaped into vessels, utensils, or equipment that is tubular would not qualify as schach, because these products can become tameh. Furthermore, even if the wood vessels were to be broken and unfit for their original use and can no longer become tameh, they remain disqualified. Although hollow, bent wooden pipes would not be kosher for schach, hollow bamboo poles would be kosher, because they grow hollow naturally, were not fashioned by anyone with the intention of putting things into their opening. Similarly, straight wooden pipes without indentations would be kosher. as well as wooden beams, even those with imperfections in the wood. However, the custom is not to use them. They have stems, flax rope, branches of a tree. If they're still connected, kosher schach material must be placed on top of the sukkah. How woods can I mean, I can post this in the
Well,
website.
the question, I thought you were going to read something about mats. That's what I.
That sounded like
That's
individual
that's what I was
bamboo.
hungry.
I'm looking for bamboo mats. Although our bamboo mats that are held together with other materials, such as string or yarn, kosher.
Okay.
As stated previously, the criteria for schach is threefold. Items that grow from the ground, items that are no longer attached to the ground, and items that cannot become tameh. Reed, straw, or wooden stats that are woven into mats would not qualify as schach if they were woven for the purpose of sitting or sleeping upon, as well as any other specific function. However, if they were made expressly for schach, these mats would be kosher. Our bamboo mats that are held together with other materials, such as string or yarn, kosher. Rav Moshe Feinstein Zatzal ruled that Venetian blinds that were made out of wooden slats and held together with cloth tape, which is makabel tumah, are not kosher. Even that's cute, Venetian blinds. Even if the tape was removed, the slats remain non-kosher and disqualified for use of schach. Based on Rav Moshe's reasoning, even if a mat was manufactured for no specific reason, since the slats were held together by cloth tape, the mats would be considered an item that is makabel tumah and could not halachically be used for schach. Mats held together with braided nylon filament thread would be disqualified for the same reason, since according to Rashi, they are considered to be woven. However, non-filament line would not be disqualified for this reason because a monofilament line merely holds the slats together and is not woven. Therefore, if the wooden mats were made for schach using monofilament line, the mats would be kosher.
Okay, stop right there. What is a monofilament line?
Monofilament is like fishing line.
Fishing line.
When you have a fishing tackle, the line you use for that, it's not woven. It's one long piece of string.
Okay.
Made from one filament.
Right.
What is it? What is it made from? What is it
Like
made
a
from?
nylon, right? It's like kind of
That's
fishing
made
is
out of usually, right? A
nylon
kosher
type.
monofilament mat must be placed on the sukkah in the proper manner. The following guidelines must be followed. The bamboo slats should be placed perpendicular to the beams and walls upon which they rest. In other words, if the monofilament line, which does not qualify as schach, is supporting the slats, the mat has been placed down improperly. One may not suspend schach with non-schach material. Furthermore, schach mats must not be anchored with string to prevent the mats from blowing away in a normal wind, ruach mitsuya. For the same reason, string, which is an improper schach material, cannot be used for anchoring. Instead, a kosher wooden beam may be placed across the mat in order to hold it down. Yeah, another piece of bamboo or wood thing.
So this creates a huge problem. Let's just stop for a second, Isaac. This creates a huge problem according to Rav Moshe, because most of the mats, even with the hechsherim, have string that are not a monofilament line. So according to Rav Moshe, it sounds like they're all going to be non-kosher. Is that what it sounds like to you, Isaac?
I'm just looking here in terms of string, anything that can become tameh, metal rods or pipes you cannot use to support. You cannot use metal to weigh down the schach, so it will not blow away. One may ever hold down the support with something that is not kosher for use of schach. If the schach is supported by wooden beams, which are used to strengthen the schach to prevent it from blowing away, or an unusual wind, then nails or string may be used as a support to the beams. How much schach?
Okay, whatever. That stuff is Yeah, the main thing is this. What does he say about the kosher mats? Does he say anything about kosher mats? Like the ones with the hechsher? That would be interesting to see what
That's what
the.
he's talking about.
Well, no, he was talking about ones that are
Hmm.
none of those are kosher because I don't think the kosher mats have any fishing rod strings. A line. They all use. There's two types actually. There's some that use string, and some use bamboo pieces to attach it. So I guess the bamboo pieces, maybe that would be more of it's not woven together. It's just string strands from bamboo that are used.
Bingo. You can't twist anything into threads and braid it. That's the point.
Yeah, but all the kosher, I have to take a look, but I think even the ones that are made with bamboo strands to attach the bamboo pieces, they might be a few pieces of bamboo twined together. I wonder if that, according to this, Reb Moshe would hold that they're not kosher. All I can tell you is my father-in-law doesn't like to use the mat. So last year he came to us for Sukkot. I had to buy all the the fronds for schach instead of using my kosher mats that that have a hechsher on them. I even have badats from Eid HaChredis in Yushalayim. It's not good enough. But it seems like maybe Rav Moshe would feel the same way. It sounds like Rav Moshe maybe was machmer with these. In other words, what it sounds like is that because the material that's holding the schach together is something that's makabel tuma, somehow the whole mat becomes a mat that's makabel tuma. That's what it sounds like from the way what you were reading. That the whole mat is basically a vessel because it's being held together by that, something along those lines. Okay, well, anyway, that's definitely interesting. It's not the common accepted view now. Maybe that's why they never did mats before, and but Moshe passed away in what 1980 something 88. So that's the somewhere after that is when they started using mats. Anyway, so here we have the big mats and the small mats, and we're not dealing here with how the mats are held together. In other words, the brisa doesn't tell us how they're being held together, so we don't really know that part of it. But somehow there's a mat made from these reeds, and if it's big, so we know it's meant for schach purposes, for shade, and therefore you could use it for schach. But if it's small, that's when that's when it's a problem because it might be being used to lie on to use as line. Now, it could be that they rely on the fact that who would lie on these painful reeds. I wonder if they use that as a leniency because it would be so painful to lie on these bamboo poles that are just so uncomfortable to lie on that maybe the only thing they could be used for is schach. Although I guess some people use it for a fence. Some people use it as fencing material. I don't know if that would make it into a vessel used for fencing material. And it was to lie on it, it becomes a vessel. To use for schach, it's not called a vessel. It's not called a makabel tuma. What about for fencing? If it's used for fencing, which I guess is the reason why the Chinese were making these in the first place. What do they use these mats for? They're commonly used probably for fencing. No, what anyone? Well, what else do they use them for? Anyone know?
Now I know I've seen in Israel they use these they use them for fencing. Same thing.
They do use them for fencing, huh?
Yeah.
Right. I'd have to think about that if that's
Rabbi,
considered makabel tuma. Yes, Moshe.
in Indonesia and places like that, they use it for roofing. They actually use bamboo. They cut these big bamboo poles. They cut them like in half, and they use them for roofing.
Roofing meaning for shade. No, they're not stopping
I don't
the
know.
rain.
No, I'm not saying for a dwelling. I'm just saying for a dwelling. I don't think that's. I don't think they use it for shade. I mean, sure, I'm sure they use it for shade too, but its principal uses for a dwelling. As far as I know.
But dwelling meaning for their roof.
For the roof, yeah. If you look, they're like aligned, and the roof is pointed, and they use them. They cover the roof with. Now they're underneath the roof. There could be kosher schach, but it's usually like there's these big round bamboo poles, and they cut them in half, and then they use them like because when the rain comes down, it doesn't go through the roof. It's used to cause the rain to go down. To go down.
Oh, so you're saying they have a different type of mat where it actually stops the rain, where it's one on top of another. It's not just next to each other.
Yeah, more or less. Yeah.
It's a whole different type of mat. Right.
Yes.
Right. But we're not using, we're not using, we've talked a little about that, about the discussion about that, because officially the schach is supposed to be able to have the rain come down. So there's a whole discussion. If you put your schach in a way that you figured out how to manipulate your schach in a way that it'll roll off. The rain will roll off. Would that be kosher? It seems to be a topic of discussion among the later rabbis if that would be kosher for schach. But anyway, so yeah, none of the mats seem to use that option. Although it would be nice if we could, because especially here in Florida, Sukkot is the most rainy season normally, and it definitely is would be very beneficial if we could use that type. But okay, anyway, so we're talking about these type of machzelas hakonim, these mats, and we have basically an argument here if they are makabel tumah. Are they susceptible to tumah? And the understanding is that we're talking about where they were just made, and we don't know. They're made like stam without any specific intention. But if you do know what they're made for, if they specifically had in mind to use a big one to lie on, so then the big one would be susceptible to tumah. Or if they specifically had in mind for a small one to be used for schach, then the small one would not be makabel tumah. So we have the case here, which is talking about where, and the Gemara will explain it later. It's talking about where you don't know what the intention was. It was just like made, and so we base it on how big it is or how small it is, according to the first opinion. And the second opinion, Rabbi Eliezer says even the big ones are we assume they're meant for lying on, and they're invalid for schach. Okay, now we have the next case of the Mishnah. The next case of the Mishnah. Oh, what's going on over here? Isaac, is that?
Sorry. I was looking sorry.
You could just press stop share screen or something.
That's what I'm doing. Gone?
No, it's still on.
My gewalt.
It should be on the top.
Looking to find, they had a webinar
Oh.
with Rav Heinemann talking about this.
Uh-huh.
And I
pressed the wrong button.
pressed the wrong button, right.
So on the top,
As
you should have a share
As
screen.
usual, I am here. So where do I stop share? Gewalt. I am so sorry. Screen sharing meeting.
Okay, thank you.
Rabbi.
Yeah.
We're good now.
We're good. Whoa, you just they left. That's an easy way of getting out of that problem. Yes, David.
Yeah, there's a AI. You know what AI is?
Yeah.
So there's an AI program called Copilot made by Microsoft, and you can ask it anything. So I just asked it about. I said, "This is a question about kosher supervision bamboo mats for the sukkah. With what materials are woven together?" So it says the bamboo mats for the sukkah, also known as schach, are typically woven together using natural materials. One common material used is called rafa, RAFFIA, which is a strong fiber harvested from the rafa palm. This ensures that the mats are both durable and kosher, meeting the strict requirements for the use in a sukkah.
So it sounds like maybe they're not intertwined. It's pieces of rafa that are it's just used itself. I have to like I have to pull
It's
out my
raffia,
raffia. Yeah,
raffia. It's a strong
right.
fiber harvested from the raffia palm.
Yeah. But I'm just wondering if it's woven with another few pieces together, or if it's just one piece. And that I don't know if AI knows.
I'll ask it. You're asking if it has sukkah in the weaving? Is it woven together with the palm with the
With a few pieces, or just one? Is it twined together, twisted into to make it tighter, or do they just use one piece of this? Okay, so back to the Gemara. We're on page 16a, and we're going to be explaining the next part of the Mishnah. The Mishnah said, a person who digs into this pile of like a haystack, and he wants to make a sukkah. And the Mishnah had said that if you do that, it's not going to be kosher. And the reason is because the schach, the roof part, is in a certain sense, it becomes the roof without you doing anything. It became a roof. You are digging into the pile of hay, and somehow you ended up that, oh, there's a roof there. So because the roof was almost like made retroactive, it was made after the fact. The roof became a roof automatically without you making it. It's not considered a kosher sukkah. We use the term tasev layman. Also, you have to make it, and it's not something that's made, that becomes made, and therefore it's not kosher. This type of sukkah. So Amar Rav Huna. Rav Huna says, Loi shanu, it was not learned that this is a problem. Ela she'ein sham halal tefach b'meshach shiva. This problem only applies if you have a haystack without any space in it and you dig from scratch.
Rabbi,
Yeah.
I asked it. I said, is it woven together with other materials? It says, in addition to raffia, bamboo mats for the sukkah can sometimes be woven together with other natural materials like cotton or jute twine, Jute. These materials are chosen because they are durable and meet the kosher requirements for the schach. So then I asked, what's jute twine? It says jute twine is a type of string made from the fibers of the jute plant, Jute. It's known for being strong, durable, and biodegradable, and it's often used in gardening, crafting, and packaging because it's a natural and eco-friendly material. It has a coarse texture and is usually light brown in color.
Yeah, it boils down to the fact that the strings that they use could be problematic. The the bamboo that's used for with the what you're calling raffia, that we have to check and find out if there are a few pieces that are twined together, or if it's just
Rabbi,
one piece. That would
Rabbi,
be something to test the schach. Yes, Moshe.
yeah, jute backing is very common in most carpets that are on floors in your home. There's two kinds. There's Axminster and jute backing. One is made polyurethane, polyethylene. Axminster is it's a twine also, but that's not a natural twine. That's used in a lot of carpets that are in people's homes. The general carpets are made from jute backing.
Mm-hmm. Interesting. And it's not natural?
I'm not the jute is the Axminster I don't think is because it's made from like polyurethane, polyethylene. If I'm not mistaken.
Uh-huh.
It's different. It's different. Usually use them for wool carpeting. Carpets are made from wool. Usually nylon carpets. Well, I don't know if you can hear me. Nylon carpets and polyester carpets. They use jute backing.
It says here, jute twine is made from the jute plant.
So that's that's a natural fiber. But the Axminster is not used for holding together more holding together like wool for wool carpeting. More expensive carpets. And I know it's because I used to work at a carpet store, so I know about this.
You lost the rabbi's connection here. David, you're the new host.
Oh,
Became the
okay.
new host.
So I'm looking, it says, there's a link here where you can actually buy jute twine on Amazon. It's a special jute made from the jute plant, and it's a big roll of a string, a big round, almost like it looks like a can, like that shape. And it's twine that's used for crafts and wrapping and gardening, and it's made from the jute plant. It's all natural.
All right. Anyway, I don't know what happened to the rabbi's connection, but looks like somehow we lost connection. And it's almost 11 o'clock, so I don't know if
It still has another couple minutes.
Here,
Rabbi
you're
Smith,
back. Oh, we just got you back. Okay, good. And you're muted. So, Rabbi, there we go.
We had some type of blackout. I don't know exactly.
Oh wow. Okay.
Strange. I don't know. Okay, so anyway, the Gemara that where we're holding here is we're explaining the Mishnah. The Mishnah had said that you dig into this thing, the haystack, it's not kosher. The Gemara had said that Rav Huna sort of qualifies this, and he says this all applies if when you put the haystack there in the first place, there was no empty space. What happens if you have empty space on the floor, on the ground, and then on top of that empty space, somehow you're able to you hold this up. There's an empty space of a tefach, avalim yesham, halal tefach. You have a hollow space of a handbreadth height, b'meshach shiva, with a length of 7 handbreadths. So what you have here is a mini sukkah. Now, it's not a kosher sukkah because a sukkah needs to have empty space of 10 handbreadths, but it is a covering. You have a schach without walls because you really need 10 handbreadths to be walls for a sukkah. But as long as there's 1 handbreadth, that would mean that the schach is considered schach. It's considered roofing material. So when you built up this haystack, you put it on, you're going to be making a sukkah from. You threw this hay all into a pile, and there's an empty space of a handbreadth on the bottom. And so by doing that, what you have there is a kosher schach. You actually made roofing for your sukkah. You didn't make walls, so now you got to make the walls. So what do? Dig upward. So now dig upward, and you'll make walls for your sukkah. Now, that sounds good. The only problem is that what part of the hay is your schach? So if the material that's on the adjacent to the hollow, if that's considered your schach, and you dig upward, then you've dug beyond your schach. And so you are back to square one, that you no longer have your schach as kosher schach. However, if you look at all the hay as every part of hay is your schach, so now you're just removing a little of the schach, but the entire part is your schach. So what you now have is a kosher sukkah because the schach was placed properly. It was placed in a way that it's schach. It just doesn't have walls, but it's placed in a way that it's schach. And now you'll just dig upward, so you'll make yourself have walls. So we're going to stop here, but that's basically the understanding of Rav Huna, and that's how, at least the way Rashi learns the case.
Rabbi, are you talking
Thank you,
about
Rabbi.
what's called a chotet begadish?
Yeah, we're in the Chotet Begadish discussion. Yeah.
There's a picture here. Can I show it?
Okay, if you want. Jeffrey, you wanted to say something while we're gonna wait
So
for.
we talked about having enough space for your head and your body and a table. So it's hard to imagine this. Yes, except, but we see he's showing you about what's rolled in our farms now. You can see it from the road a lot of time. It's rolled in such a way that it's almost like it's a separate substance or a mat. Okay? And there are also other versions. Some farms do it this way. Some farms do them in rectangular packages. So you could easily imagine that you piled them. Okay. I don't know if these rolled ones, I think, are done by a machine.
Right.
So I think they're sort of pushed into place, and they don't have any strings or anything attached to keep them that shape. Right. I think that may also be true about different kinds of machines that make them in rectangular bundles. You could easily see how you could build that up, and then use something like this. It's almost like a mat, but without having any attachments. So that's why it would be okay. But the space is still more like what we said. What did you say? A sukkah sarucha or something like that. Like a smelly sukkah.
Right. Srucha, yeah, dira srucha.
Yeah. So I don't see how that qualifies, but they weren't worried about this apparently in here. But certainly possible to compact straw or something like or grass like that that you give normally for feed to animals. But it's certainly possible to do that.
Right. So to answer your question about Dira Srucha, thank you, David, by the way, for sharing the screen. Very nice picture there, and gives us a little more perspective when you see the practicality of it. And also, like when you're driving on these areas and during Sukkahs and you're near a farm, now you have this idea, I could just run to the side of the road and, just dig in and then just start eating my sandwich, right? And with the Gemara we learned said, no, you got to lift up the schach and then drop it back down. So now you have and then it might fall through because then it's no longer like all interconnected, now it's interconnected. So it might not work actually. It sort of ruins the whole, this whole idea of.
Hold on a second and unshare so that I can share. I'll show you the most creative sukkah I have ever seen.
Right. Okay. Now,
he has
Jeffrey,
to stop sharing.
He's
okay.
Done.
He did. Okay, screen.
So Dira Srucha really is when it's less than 10 handbreadths high. Once it's 10 handbreadths high, it shouldn't be that.
Okay, wie ben ik? This is the Zoom meeting. This is my Google Drive.
Doors in the back, okay? And now what problems do you have? You have a couple of problems. One problem is where's the third wall? Well, the third wall would be the front window, by the driver. That's too far. That's more than 7 feet. That's not kosher. The other problem is you have the distance between the bottom of the doors and the floor is too high. It's more than 3 tefachim. So, but we do have a picture of somebody who solved that problem. They really did this. They said this is a real picture. The next one, someone who did this and really sat in this. Okay, so here's a family that allowed us to use this picture. Okay, they gave us permission. Okay, so Avram is asking, why can't you consider the back of the back seat as a third wall? You could, but it's not. It's too high off the floor as well. So what they did over here is they put a board here and they attached it to the.
It's attached.
It's attached. It has to be attached. Yes, they attached it to the.
What did they do?
They glued this tape here. Okay, and the same thing on this side. This one's a little bent, but okay, as long as it's sturdy enough. Okay, then you can't see what's behind them. But what they did is they stacked up their luggage. So behind, in between this man and his son, there's luggage there.
I see.
And on the bottom of the car also there's luggage. But under, behind this person's feet there's luggage. So the third wall is the luggage behind. The luggage doesn't move in the wind. The luggage is sturdy. And then on top here, you see they put a cross beam. Okay, and then they put these slats.
Those cross beams, how did they get? They look like they notched them or something.
Yeah, they notched them up, and then they put these slats there. So this is really ingenious, and they actually sat in there, and they even got the baby in there. So so that's what it is.
You have a tailgate.
So
sukkah.
you that's how they made the sukkah. You mentioned a car, the
Sunroof. Yeah.
sunroof.
Yeah, what do they say about the sunroof? Isaac, okay. Well, another time we'll listen to about the sunroof. Thank you, Isaac. All right, we're
Yeah,
gonna
a whole
come
bunch
here.
of different
All right.
things
Thank
like
you, Rabbi.
that, but that-
Yashikoah.
the one
Rabbi.
with the
Baruch.
rock coming
Thank you,
out
Rabbi.
the back,
Uh-huh.
so that you can stick it as holding it up. It just was, and the two doors, the two back doors make you three walls. If you put luggage behind you, you got three walls.
Yeah, so I would just make a mention that it could be problematic, some of these type of things, if there's a lot of wind. If you're in the highway, on the side of the highway and doing that, I don't know. You have to be careful about relying on these type of sukkahs. The wind blows them away. And it sounds nice and looks good, but if the wind knocks it down or closes the doors and who knows what, it depends on the high wind areas, could ruin it. But anyway, yeah, but thank you for sharing that. That's definitely interesting. Okay, Zygos on everyone.
Oh, yeah, thank you,
you.
Rebbe.